I discovered that a lot of information from the Enuma Elish and the seven tablets of creation is a lot of in Genesis, a lot of the creation story that comes into Genesis. Not all of it, but because obviously Genesis is a much smaller version of a much bigger story. But it's literally almost word for word from the Enuma Elish.
So Billy's basic argument here is that the Old Testament, particularly Genesis, was copied from other ancient texts, and he says that the Genesis creation account is...
It's literally almost word for word from the Enuma Elish.
Which is an insane claim to anyone who's read both, which is why Wes decides to ask Billy if he's read it before making a really smart move.
Have you read the Enuma Elish?
Yeah, I've done lectures.
Sure. Do you mind summarizing the content of the creation account in the Enuma Elish for us?
Now, this was actually a really smart move from Wes, because if you've ever read the creation account in Genesis 1 and 2, I want you to tell me just how much Billy's summary sounds like the creation account in Genesis.
Sure. The Enuma Elish is a very ancient text discovered in the Library of Ashurbanipal, and the summary of it is that it really gives us an account, which is crazy, an astronomical account of the creation of our solar system. It talks about planets and moons gaining specific orbits around the sun. It talks about a huge planet named Tiamat, 4 to 6 times larger than Earth. Earth didn't exist at the time that this, according to the author of this text, which is pretty interesting. And then there's talks about a nemesis of sorts. In the original version, it's called Nibiru, but in a more recent version, still thousands of years old, the name was changed to Marduk. Marduk is in the Jewish American Library, in the biblical text, in the Torah, and so forth. Very popular figure in ancient times in the religious books and texts. Marduk wanted to be the destroyer, so Marduk is the one that during its next orbit towards Tiamat, crashed into Tiamat and destroyed Tiamat. A huge chunk of it swung away, recoalesced, taking the water, land, and organic material, which basically recoalesced as our planet here, Earth. And the rest of it broke up into pieces. Some of it turned into the asteroid belt. Other parts of it were thrown towards the sun, and some were thrown towards the inner Oort cloud, towards the outer edge of the solar system. This planet, or this moonlet that orbited supposedly a brown dwarf, based on the description of it, gained a very strange orbit around our sun. And we have the scientific evidence now also to match with NASA's data, where we see that Saturn and I believe Neptune switch places. Uranus is flipped on its side, and that's more evidence that something came through our solar system in ancient times and gravitationally really tugged at planets here and switched up their orbits and even pulled the axis of a planet on its own side, where the equator is now running north and south. So a little bit of modern astrophysics kind of backs up what this ancient text is saying. But the Enuma Elish also then begins to talk about the fact that these beings, it kind of cuts into the fact that these beings, are on Earth and at some point begin to engage mankind. In other words, they didn't create people from scratch, but they engaged the existing hominid and began to utilize us as workers for their workforce.
Yup. Exactly like Genesis.
It's literally almost word for word from the Enuma Elish.
So now let's hear how Wes responds.
I think that there are components of what you said that I would say are in there. I'm not sure it's the best summary. Nonetheless, okay, going with what you said that there were like verbatim parallels with the biblical creation story. Even just going off of what you said, which I think there are components of that I would agree with, the Battle of the Gods, the concept of Enki and the younger gods, and they fight Tiamat, and then Marduk, who swears he'll defeat Tiamat, and Kwenku, who kills Tiamat by shooting her with an arrow, and there's this big battle, and then the gods that die end up being the earth and the sky and even us, because we are the end result of that battle. I'm just curious, when you say that there are not just parallels, but there's actual copying, looking at Genesis chapter 1 and 2, where the creation story is summarized in the Bible, what are the actual kind of parallels there that you're looking to? Because as someone who's read both, I not only do I not find parallels, I actually, and this is the majority of ancient Near Eastern scholarship with me, think that Genesis chapter 1 is actually an apologetic against documents like the Enuma Elish. So what are the parallels there?
So Billy is now in the hot seat once again. Now that he's being pressed to give evidence again, how do you think that he'll respond?
So what are the parallels there?
Separated the waters from the waters, for example. That's in the Enuma Elish, and that's also in the biblical text.
And as polite as Wes is, he simply couldn't hold back his amusement at this point.
Okay, that I would agree is a parallel. The only reason I highlight that is that if you're making this the argument, because if you brought it up, and I mean this with all due respect, there are superficial parallels. I would agree. You know, the separation of the water, the concept of the earth being formless and void. That's also in the Enuma Elish. However, I think all the other details, you know, it's the details that make the difference. And if we're looking at not the superficial crossovers, but the actual themes and concepts of what it's saying, you don't have a creation within 7 days.
The Bible's not going to take the Enuma Elish and put it into the biblical text. There are certain words that they utilize that let me know that they copied it from that text. Like, for example,
so what words?
Separating the water from the waters, the void, the earth being void. That information is literally just copied over. So it tells you that somebody saw that and said, let me add it to this book right here, or let me add it to the scripture or this papyrus, because it wasn't a book yet.
So initially, Billy said that Genesis was copied word for word, and then he provided part of one sentence in support of his claim, with Wes providing another. Then when asked for clarity, Billy repeats Wes's second sentence back to Wes in support of his claim. And then Billy seems to change his argument to say that there were some sentences that were copied, even though he can only provide part of one, and Wes gave him the other one. So let's go ahead and hear his response to this, and then we'll wrap up.
Let me just say this. So the reason why I say it's actually an apologetic against that is because the purpose of the Enuma Elish, which the Babylonians read every Babylonian New Year, was to point out the fact that the deities, and there's countless deities in the Babylonian pantheon, they actually come from the created order. So they're not outside of time and space. They actually come from the created order. And when they die in this battle, right, when Tiamat is defeated, the defeated gods become the earth and the sky and the plants and even you and me. And in that sense, the theme is that you don't actually have any purpose or end result. And you're not created in the image of God. In fact, in the ancient Babylonian system, only the kings were created in the image of God. I would say what we see within the biblical account is that God purposefully creates. There's only one God. He purposefully creates, and then he creates, and it's good. And it continues to say it's good 7 times. And then at the end of chapter 1, just for, you know, the thick people in the original audience, it says, and then it was very good. And then he creates humanity, not kings, but simply the humans that he creates in God's image. And they have purpose and meaning, and that instills them with this creation order. And that's not what we find in the Enuma Elish. In fact, we find the opposite in the Enuma Elish, is that the created order is not good. It's a mistake, and that you are not created in the image of God. And there's a reminder that regular people are not created in the image of God. I would say, just with all due respect, the parallels linguistically are not there. There might be superficial kind of concepts that are there, but they're so superficial that we can find them in everything, in the sense of I'm in an office studio, you're in your office studio. That doesn't mean that, you know, that we're the same people or we're even in the same place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't agree with that. I just see if I have all these texts out, there's a lot of different information that you can see. There's a lot of it's been copied word for word into the biblical text.
But what's the word for word?
In your version of what you believe in, you keep saying that God's a he.
Yep.
And so where do you get that from?
And once again, Billy failed to provide a response to Wes's fact-based claim and didn't provide a counterclaim before deciding to change the subject. So we're barely even 30 minutes into the debate at this point, and so far, Wes has completely dismantled every single piece of evidence that Billy has brought forth, and the rest of the debate continues to go on just like this. And by the way, there were countless copyright claims being filed to protect Billy to have the videos taken down, but it seems now that there's so many clips surfacing that the videos are now being left alone. alone. So we'll see if this video even stays up, but I think it's now clear why Billy wanted to keep this debate off the internet so badly. He wasn't capable of providing any evidence for any of his claims that he's been teaching for years that are causing people to doubt the validity of the Bible. And if people want to question the veracity of the Bible, then they should do so based on facts. But as we've seen in this debate, the facts overwhelmingly support its reliability. So all in all, this debate serves as a reminder that Christianity is built on a firm foundation, not myths or misinformation. And most importantly, this points us back to the heart of the gospel. Christ really did live, die, and rise again, which is a historical event that changed the world forever. And his resurrection isn't just a claim, it's the cornerstone of our faith and the hope that we have today.